Good afternoon. I bring greetings from Washington, D.C., and I wanted to share before I started formal introductions what I might take back with me to Washington, D.C. A room full of professionals committed to the problems of practice for which there will always be, and for which we, as the experts, have the answers. It is important that Secretary DeVos, excuse my political leanings here, President Trump, and members of Congress understand that the real work happens here. We are not afraid of asking the questions. We are not afraid of the problems, and we have the solutions, and they are here in Nevada at UNLV today. My name is Rod Lucero. I am the Vice President at the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, AACTE. I have the high honor of introducing the Dean of the UNLV College of Education. I've been here to visit several times, and I cannot be more impressed with the quality of this program. In fact, we brought a film crew out to film the faculty and staff, the students, the pre-K-12 administrators, teachers, principals that are part of this incredible collaboration. The systemic, the systemic research and the dissemination of the next best practices are part of everything that is done in this College of Education. I believe that education is a critical lever in a democratic society, and the strong work of teachers and schools across the country are urgently important to our future. No more than right now at this moment in history. I have found that challenges can best be addressed by a unified profession, by one profession. Kindergarten teachers, principals, deans, professors, seeing ourselves engaged in one continuum of services. One continuation of services mobilized around our science, the science of pedagogy. Events such as this promote the working together and the betterment of learning experiences for all. It is a privilege to introduce a stalwart advocate of collaboration, an educational innovator, and a voice of reason, and at a time when a voice of reason is what is called for. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce to you the Dean of the UNLV College of Education, Dean Kim Metcalf.
Thank you, Rod. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, yeah, now you know how this works. Let's try that again. Good afternoon, everyone. Better, still not great, but I'll move ahead. But before I dive into what I'm about to say, I want to make a couple of announcements. One, when we put the program together, we invite people to come and speak, and we ask them to speak about issues that are near and dear to them. We don't edit what they say. We don't script them about what they're going to say. And as I listened, I have to tell you, if I had known what we were going to talk about thus far in the day, my presentation would be a little bit different, because this is heavy stuff, right? Very heavy stuff. And toe tag monologues just sort of hit me right in the heart. I suspect it did many of you too. So after I get done, we have a scheduled break. We're going to shorten that to about 10 minutes instead of 15, and we're going to ask Karen Gross to come back up and just talk to us about the implications or applications of what she shared with us this morning for the way we may be feeling, particularly as it relates to things that came out in the toe tag monologues. Second thing I want to say is, and I'm flattered, I'm actually a little embarrassed, that you've often heard people talk about me or the work my colleagues are doing in the College of Education, and I'm very, very proud of that. But we're not the only place in Nevada, and not even the only place in southern Nevada that's doing really good work. Dennis, are you still here? Dennis Potoff, Dean of the College of Education at Nevada State College, was here earlier. I just need to recognize that they were awarded a $2.7 million grant, his minority serving institution grant to focus on teacher prep, particularly recruiting folks into the teaching profession who come from families of color. In case, is anyone still here from NSC? Let's give them a round of applause, please. Second thing I want to say before I start is I have been obsessing since President Jessup mentioned the notion of he started the day with good hair. I don't think I did, but it's hard to know. So with that, I'll dive in because I know Kelsey's thinking, okay, you were already over time, so keep going. First of all, thank you all for being here. Those of you who have heard me speak before know that I like to do a little bit different style of presentation. Today's going to be a little bit different even from that. We're going to talk about some aspects of my life and things that have happened in my family, particularly in the last 3 years, but over the past few generations that I think have implications and have caused me to think about some things that I want to share with you today. Some of this will be a little heavy, but there is in fact a positive message to it, and my kimochi is hopeful. Right? I hope that when I finish today, you will have a sense of hope. Here we go. Over the past 3 years, my family's been forced to become acutely aware of the state of cancer treatment in this country and of the work done by academic medical institutions. In our case, it's been MD Anderson. The circumstances promoting this, or provoking this, of course, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, much less my eldest daughter. My daughter's journey, which is the inspiration of much of what I'll talk about today, represents only the most recent leg of a journey my family, and specifically the women in my family, have taken for about 40 years. The cancer my daughter is fighting today took my great aunt in 1980, took my mother in 1995, afflicted both of my sisters about a decade ago, and has made its cruel way to my daughter. For good or bad, as we've traveled this path, it's given me the opportunity, or perhaps more accurately, forced me to step back and reflect on a variety of things, some personal, some professional, some spiritual. I guess because those experiences have been so powerful for me, and they've come at a time when our university and our college is focused on moving forward. Some of those realizations, and that's the term I'll use here, I've come to believe have implications as we consider how to refine or revise or redefine the role of a college of education, particularly in a research-extensive university. I'd like to share some of these with you, and I'll tell a little story as we go. Bear with me, please. First realization is, as my family and my daughter have dealt with this situation, I really became aware of my own tendency to view the same data, or essentially the same set of data, two different ways depending on the context. Right? The point of it is, even as a data guy, I'm not necessarily consistent. Right? Before I get into a specific concrete example, I want to do something that I think you may find kind of fun. Some of you will have seen this before. Take a look at this graphic. What do you see? What are the primary figures you see there? How many people see rectangles? Yeah, there are about 20 rectangles there. Anybody see any other shapes? Somebody said circles. Now I have to tell you, I didn't see that until somebody pointed it out. There are actually 16 circles there. 4 rows of 4. Right? The interesting thing to me has been, since Danielle, our graduate assistant, shared this with me a few days ago, now when I look at it, I have to force myself to try to find the rectangles. I mean, it's just bizarre. The point is, right, neither of those perceptions is wrong, but we look at the same thing and we see different things. Let's go to a cancer education example. Since 1980, the number of people in the U.S. diagnosed with cancer has increased slightly. During that same period, the number of people diagnosed with cancer in the U.S. who survive has also increased slightly. Positive improvements. That leads most of us, and I include myself there, to focus on the extent to which we have made progress in the way we treat cancer. In real numbers, this year, we anticipate there will be roughly 1.7 million Americans diagnosed with cancer. Of those, a little over 1 million will survive, and about 600,000 will not survive. Let's compare that with another issue that I think we all agree is important: high school enrollment and completion rates. During that same period of time, the number of children attending U.S. high schools has increased by about 15%. At the same time, again, not unlike the line in cancer, the number of children graduating successfully from high school in 4 years has also increased. In real numbers, of the little over 4 million U.S. students who were enrolled in grades 9 through 12 as of this fall, we can anticipate that about 3.3 million of them will graduate in 4 years, within 4 years. Of them, about 700,000 will drop out. Most of us, when we look at those numbers, tend to conclude something very different than we do looking at similar numbers with cancer. Right? We often, many of us are guilty of this, talk about the failure of our schools. The point, again, is not that either of those conclusions is inaccurate or even that they're unfair, but that the way we look at the data is a result of a number of things, and the conclusions we draw and the actions we take depend on those. Right? So as I realized that about myself, I began to wonder why it is I feel more comfortable saying we've made tremendous progress in cancer treatment, and less confident and less comfortable drawing the same conclusion about our progress in terms of high school graduation, which leads me to my next realization, if you will. I do believe a part of that, not just for me, but for us as a public, is a result of the systematic and incremental way we go about addressing, exploring, and advancing progress in medicine. My own family, I think, bears some of that out. In the three pillars, if you will, of the treatment that my great aunt received in 1980 and my daughter receives right now are virtually the same: surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation therapy. In 1980, for my great aunt, surgery was the primary element used. It was aggressive, it was radical, it was disfiguring. It was supplemented with radiation therapy, and at the time, an experimental chemotherapy. For my mother, there was surgery. Chemotherapy was the major technique, and in fact, we learned just a few weeks ago that the drug that was used for her, which was experimental at the time, is 4 generations old. The therapy and treatment that my daughter currently receives again includes surgery. In fact, it has included multiple surgeries, but they've been targeted and they've been expanded incrementally as was necessary. She's gotten chemotherapy primarily as a way to clean things up, right? But the bulk of her treatment has been radiation therapy delivered in some really amazingly targeted ways. The point of that is, across those generations, we have seen the advances, at a deep level, but at a surface level you would see only that we're using the same three basic pillars. All of that led me to wonder where that kind of change and innovation occurs. There's a good bit of evidence to indicate that much of that progress, particularly in cancer treatment, has been a result of the work at academic medical centers. And I want to make sure we talk about that specifically. Academic medical centers, places that define themselves not just as centers where they are providing care, not just as centers that integrate the training of future medical professionals with offering care. My hands are shaking. Anybody see that? Can you see my hands shaking? I can. But they're places that integrate this notion of advancing the science. Okay? This quote was delivered in an address by Dr. Michael Stamos, who was at the time interim dean at the medical school, UC Irvine. Right? But there is growing empirical evidence to suggest that much of the advance that we see, particularly in cancer treatment, is a result of the work that's done at those kinds of centers. Rhee, whose article you can't really see, but that's the front page, in a review of research a few years ago concluded, and I quote, "Academic medical centers in this country have generated a truly remarkable stream of fundamental and applied research discoveries. This research has provided practicing physicians with powerful additions to their disease-fighting armamentarium." Did I say that right, Danielle? Thank you. Armamentarium. I love that. I'm trying to figure out how to use that in conversation. The point, however, is, right, that those places view their role as including identifying what will become next generation practice. Okay? Certainly our experience with MD Anderson has reiterated that for us. My daughter is being treated through the Gynecologic Oncology Center at MD Anderson. Right? When you look at all of their materials, this is the home page for that particular center, right? The emphasis is on this notion of moving and advancing the science. In that particular one, right? You notice the phrases pioneering new treatments, and this one I really love. Changing the standard of care through research. In fact, even in that center alone, the course of treatment my daughter is getting, while experimental, is only one of 3 courses that are being studied simultaneously to treat the same cancer. All of them are based on best known practice and add to that what they believe are ways to improve it as it moves forward. So I want to talk about that for just a minute. What is it about academic medical centers that might promote that kind of advancement? Well, I think when you look at it, and I'll try to build this argument here in a minute, the fact of the matter is they're built around integrating three core functions in ways that build synergy across those. Right? Again, this notion of innovation and research, moving things forward. Second piece, professional education, and in fact, the ways they use folks in professional education and in the midst of their programs optimizes their ability to provide service. All of those come together then to provide families like mine with cutting-edge medical services and practices. I'd like to look at each of those 3 elements for just a couple of minutes, talk about our experience with MD Anderson, and I'd like to explore how those same things might be integrated in an education analog. Again, I forgot the slide. Sorry about that, Kelsey. Right? This is material from the Association of Academic Medical Centers. When you look at their promotional materials, they're the professional organization that represents these entities. They're very explicit about those 3 components and the contributions they make. Right? They make no bones about it. So here we go, where I thought I was before. Realization number 5. The core function of those academic medical centers, and again, they're very explicit about it, is to identify, validate, and disseminate the next generation of medical treatment and care. Right? Our experience at MD Anderson certainly has left no doubt in our mind about that. Here they talk specifically about the role of research. But in that statement, and you may not be able to read it, there are a couple of phrases in there that I think are really important. One, they humbly note that they engage the greatest minds in the field. And secondly, and this is my favorite, tomorrow's medicine is available to our patients first. They truly do believe and are committed to making sure they're not delivering the best care we know of today, but what they believe will be the best care available tomorrow. Even their faculty, right? This is one of my daughter's surgeons. Dr. Vauthe, again, very humbly noted to us that he was the world's leading surgeon for this kind of procedure. And just as an aside, and Diane's sitting here, and she's heard me talk about this, but when he said that, at the time I thought, what an arrogant bastard. But as we left his office, and I thought about it, I thought, you know what? He's going to be holding literally my daughter's life in his hands. And I want somebody who believes there's nobody in the world better than him to be doing that, right? But if you look at his biography, right, he doesn't talk about patient care he provides or the number of surgeries he provides. He talks about the way his work has changed the way people do oncological surgery, right? I will also note at this point that as a part of this, right, my daughter is a part of this one clinical trial, but she's also engaged in a variety of ancillary studies at the same time. Whenever we go with her, right, there are people asking her questions about development of postoperative care and progress, or about any reactions she may have had to new combinations of drugs, right? Or to a variety of aspects. All of those are focused on particular aspects of the experience and the care intended to improve it. What might that look like in an education analog? And I really, really wish I had known what you were going to say, Dale, because I would have changed my example. But let's use this one. Because I think I can do it relatively simply. Let's say we're interested in improving the way we deliver early literacy instruction. Well, how might we do that in this education analog? Well, the first thing we would do is identify the one or two or three practices that are currently agreed to be the best we know right now. What is it that is the standard of care available in early literacy? To those, we would add one or more new strategies that we believe on the basis of research and the theory that we have available would be better than any of those three. We would assign those methods of early literacy instruction to various classrooms across a number of schools. We would implement them and we would begin collecting data. Now, I want to make sure you understand this point. No one is getting anything less than the best we already know. But some people are getting what we believe is the next thing we will come to know. We implement that and collect data, and over time, we take what we're learning that works, adding it to what we're already doing. We eliminate things that we find that don't work. The point of that exercise is to gradually narrow us towards some answer. It is not the answer. There is no answer. There is no one answer. As soon as we've done the best we can, we need to look for what the next best thing we can do is. We've got to continually be pushing that envelope. But the goal is to do it systematically, right? Compare that with the way we often do educational innovation, right? Everyone is going to do this. And we'll collect data on it to see if it works. And we get through a year or 2 or 3 years, and if it doesn't work, we've invested 2 or 3 years in something that we found doesn't make any bit of difference, right? The point of this is, In this analog, we would be much more systematic and incremental about that. We wouldn't be hoping to find the answer, but merely to be refining an answer. Second piece of it related to the way, in fact, academic medical centers employ and use all of the personnel available to them. Thanks to television and wonderful deep shows like ER, which I remember, or Grey's Anatomy, which my daughters actually watch, but I have no idea about. Different issue, right? We all are familiar with this notion of medical interns and medical residents and attending physicians and how those people are all engaged in patient care, right? Now, television probably portrays it in a very simplistic way, but, our experience at MD Anderson supports that. Right? Most of the people my daughter deals with are not her two primary physicians. They spend very little time with her. Is that a bad thing? I would say no, because my daughter is continually bombarded with residents who are responsible for implementing a good bit of that treatment, interns who support that, other support personnel who add to that. It does two things. First of all, the way they approach that expands the number of people who are working with my daughter to provide her care and treatment. It also makes sure those two physicians are focused on what they are clearly intended to be doing, and that is identifying next generation practices. All right? I go back to this research at MD Anderson piece because even there, right, they note the importance of those folks in training. Bright students and trainees contribute to our dynamic environment, right? I pushed the wrong one, pardon me. What might that look like in our education analog? Well, this is a little bit simplistic too, and in fact, the example I'm going to give you is built on an assumption that the nature and structure of schools doesn't change. So there's still big buildings divided up into individual classrooms or instructional spaces. But I think it will still work. First of all, most of those classrooms would not be overseen and managed by a master teacher. They'd be overseen and managed full-time with full responsibility by what I'm going to call education residents. Folks who are virtually done with all of their formal preparation, who know what to do, whose professional competence we leverage in ways to cover those classrooms. They work under the supervision and with the guidance of a small number of highly professional, very, very experienced master teachers. They are supported, in this example, by groups of 1 to 4 or more education interns. Let's say in our example, folks maybe who are halfway through their program. They've developed some level of professional skill, but we know they're not done and they know they're not done either. They're in there to learn, to watch those residents and learn from the master teacher, but we leverage what they do know in ways that expand services for the kids in those classrooms and to the families whose children are served by that school. At another level, we might be talking about folks who are brand new or early in their education program. And I don't have a really cool name for them, so just bear with me here. Right? They might be organized into teams of students, maybe interdisciplinary teams, right? This could be really cool. You get someone who's preparing to be a regular classroom teacher with a special educator, with someone who's preparing to be in EL, with a counselor, with a school psychologist, maybe even you throw in an aspiring administrator, and they travel in maybe the educational equivalent of rounds, working with a master teacher or one of the senior residents. They go and they see what's happening in classrooms. And they ask questions about why it's happening. And they talk about it, the goal of which is to help them understand how what they're seeing in practice relates and is informed by theory and research. And realization number 7, which is the last one, you'll be probably happy to know. Right? Academic medical centers put those things together in ways that achieve, as I mentioned at the very beginning, synergy across those things. Through an academic medical center, I'm sorry, I had to make sure the slide was changing. Through an academic medical center, my daughters received genuinely cutting-edge medical care. Quite literally, the treatment is available nowhere else in the world. She's worked with a range of medical professionals that is far broader and the services provided far deeper than would be typically available in any other setting. And all of this was done, as they are eager to point out, under the guidance and supervision of some of the best academic physicians in the world. By creating an environment in which innovation into continually better methods of treatment and extensive clinical training of medical personnel are integrated, the sum is greater. Now see, I don't remember the damn phrase. But you know what I'm going to say, right? It's more powerful than it would be if you just looked at the parts. Boy, I was on a roll too, wasn't I? Dang it. But the fact of the matter is, those come together in ways that provide families like mine with medical services and medical experiences that we would never be able to get anywhere else. Making cancer history is the tagline of MD Anderson, which I think is amazing. I love that tagline. Have they eliminated cancer? No. Have they eliminated deaths from cancer? No. Will they cure my daughter's cancer? I don't know, but I believe they will. But I have no doubt that the treatment my daughter has received, and probably will continue to receive, is the most innovative and advanced cancer treatment available. It's delivered by some of the best minds in the field and assisted and augmented by teams of professionals in training. And this one is important to me, hugely important to me. I am equally confident that as they provide those services to my daughter and our family, they're learning things that they will use to improve and extend the lives of literally tens of thousands of young women in the future. That's the power. Is an education analog possible? Could we create an environment that promoted systematic, incremental innovation, engaged educators in training in intensive clinical experiences that truly leverage our use of their growing professional capacity in ways that provide children and families with exceptional and cutting-edge education services? Well, I am delighted today to announce that through the generosity of the Kagi Foundation, our friends at Teach for America, and an anonymous donor who made a gift of $4.5 million, we have a chance to find out. We will use those funds to create what we are currently calling the School for Innovation, Research, and Education. Please note, is the president still here? Please note that the use of the term school is a Board of Regents term, and we cannot apply that until we've worked it through, but it's the concept that applies here, right? What would this look like? Well, to be honest, I don't know, and we don't have a model on which to base it. No one's really tried it at this sort of ambitious level before. But our vision for this is to create a world-renowned center of innovation and robust research that pushes educational transformation not just here, but around the world. We want to create an environment like those academic medical centers I spoke about. There's a lot to be worked out. As I said, we don't have a model for this, so we're sort of creating this from scratch. The initial 6 to 12 months will be focused on conceptualizing, developing, and operationalizing what this might look like. Among those initial tasks will be identifying an interim director to lead the work, Many of you will hear from us because we'll be putting together working groups to begin to talk about how we might structure things. For example, how might we structure research protocols? How will we operate this school in ways that ensure it's effective and efficient? A number of those kinds of things. And as a part of that process, we'll begin begin a search, national search, for a more permanent director. What will it look like over time? I don't know. What it looks like in year 3, I would hope, is not what it looks like in year 5 or 8 or 10. This is hugely ambitious, and as I stand here before you, there is sweat running down my back because it feels just a tiny bit overwhelming. But I take comfort in knowing that MD Anderson, which is now the world's largest cancer center, and routinely the highest rated academic medical center in the world, began in an abandoned military barracks with a gift of $300,000. You've heard me over the past few years talk about our vision for the college. Our faculty are focused on the notion of providing the best possible information we can to make innovation and progress real and meaningful for policymakers, practitioners, and in the field of educator preparation. SIRE is in fact a reflection of the commitment my colleagues in the College of Education have had to doing truly innovative, meaningful work to make the lives of children and families better. They are wonderful colleagues doing great work. This would never have happened without them. The second piece of that, folks, is it would never have been possible without many of you in this room and the partnerships that you've helped us establish. Right? This really will be a huge endeavor, but I believe it can be a catalyst to enhance our ability to support the work that our faculty is already doing. And with Rod here from AACTE, I do believe we may be able to develop something that could serve as an example of the role research-extensive colleges of education play in the decades ahead of us. I truly do look forward to sharing with you in coming years the progress and even the struggles that we encounter as we move forward in this exciting venture. But I thank you very, very much for your support and for your attention this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you.